We're live.
We're back.
And today we're going to talk about Law 28
Yeah.
from the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. So, as you know, Law 28 is enter action with boldness. If you're unsure of a course of action, do not attempt it. Your doubts and hesitations will infect your execution. Timidity is dangerous. Better to enter with boldness. Any mistakes you commit through audacity are easily corrected with more audacity. Everyone admires the bold. No one honors the timid. So Law 28, enter action with boldness. What do you got to say about it?
I love it. I believe in it wholeheartedly
Yeah.
because I've actually done it. And so, and it worked for me. So I'm a firm believer of most of the laws. Like the last one that we did, Law 27, I'm not too thrilled with it, creating cult-like followers and so forth. It's not my thing, okay? It's there, so we need to be aware of it so, like we said, we don't get played by that.
Right.
But this one, I actually implemented it.
Where did you implement it, or when?
About 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, I bought an insurance agency. And within that insurance agency, there was a gentleman that had a lot of power, and he had a great book of business. And I knew that the primary person, the main chief officer that owned the business, it was without getting too complicated, it was a partial purchase. So I felt that there was going to be a little bit of cleanup of that book of business, okay? And
So you're buying a business, but not the full business. It's
not the
a
full
percentage
business.
of the business.
Correct.
Okay.
I was buying a percentage of the business, which is tricky in itself already. Most people won't do it. If they don't buy the full, they just walk away. And it may be wise. I went through a lot. But within that book of business, there was a gentleman that had built a substantial number of clients, and he was selling too. So it was like a two-part deal. And I wanted that book. I knew that was an excellent book. And so initially, I had tremendous doubts because of that partial purchase. Every time I've purchased an insurance agency, I buy it whole. Anyway, and so I had doubts. So I did what I always do, which is I do a T-chart. And I put pros versus cons. And, if the pros outweigh the cons, I'll probably move forward and so forth. In this particular case, they were just about even. And so it was very difficult for me to make a decision. And I remember, I kid you not, I give you my word, there's no reason, I went back to this law. I read this law. And I said, if I'm going to do this, I need to follow this law. I go all out. Because, that old saying that says, doubt, if you have doubt, it affects your execution. And the people around you are going to feel it. They're going to see it. And, I had a staff that were also, anytime you do a move like this, you need to share it with your staff. You're not alone in this world.
So your T-chart helped you come to a decision, and then once you made that decision, you went all out.
I went all out, but prior to that, I went to this law, and I read this law, and I read that chapter, and I consumed it, and I let it come in me. You need to be a believer, okay? Because
Right.
there's nothing perfect in life.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you have the most perfect agency on paper or business, let's just say business, the most perfect business on paper, okay, something potentially is going to go wrong. And you're going to have to figure out how to fix that along the way.
Right.
Okay? The other thing that I did was that if I didn't buy that agency, I knew that somebody else was going to buy it. And then that would propel that person much further up
So
than me.
So once you decided you were gonna do it, there was like no going back.
No
You had
going
made a
back.
decision, and then there was no hesitation after that point.
Correct.
But it took you a process to get to that point.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was a while. Not a, when you're buying an agency or any kind of business, you got to
Yeah.
look at the books. You got to look at revenue. You got to look at,
Yeah.
like a forecast kind of thing, right?
Yeah, but you didn't just jump into it. You did your homework first.
Right. But I'm here to tell you and everybody else, it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, because I stayed awake quite a few nights trying to come to this decision. It's
Sure.
not an easy thing to do,
Yeah.
you know.
But then
There's
once
a lot
you
of money involved. Huh?
But once you decide, you commit. And I think that's what
That's it.
Robert Greene's talking about.
That's what he's
you
talking
can't
about.
hesitate once
No.
you make that decision.
Correct.
And if you would have taken too long, the opportunity also could have gone past
For
you.
sure. Yeah. And
Yeah.
there were a lot of things that were involved in that deal
Yeah.
that made it tricky.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, see, when you follow this law, because remember, there's that old saying, and it gets attributed to this law that says, going halfway with half a heart digs a deeper grave. And I've heard that before.
Yeah.
But now it's associated with Robert Greene's Law 28, interaction with boldness. And that saying, I've heard before, it says, going halfway with half a heart digs a deeper grave. And I believe that, because had I shown a lot of doubt in this, the people, my staff, the people that follow me,
Oh, they'll sense it.
they'll sense it,
Yeah.
and then more things will go awry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you give people the opportunity of telling you, I knew this was going to happen. I told you this was going to happen, and you got to just crush through that door.
Yeah.
Just go through it, and I did that, for better or for worse. I really didn't know what the outcome was going to be.
Sure.
I thought that the outcome would be good, because otherwise I wouldn't have done it. But I really didn't know. There were no guarantees. And so
Yeah.
once
Yeah.
I got into it, everything that came forth as an obstacle, I tried to bulldoze right through it. There was just no stopping me.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the mentality that you need to use, you know?
Yeah, you're fully committed. That's what, when I think of the word boldness, it's like, you're there to fight, and you'll
Fully committed.
overcome whatever.
It takes a lot of
That's the
energy, it takes a lot of time, commitment, persistence, you name it, whatever.
You
But
know-
you got to make it work.
When I was studying the law and prepping for this, I thought of Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter. And he paid $44 billion. A lot of people were complaining about Twitter at the time because they were saying there was a lot of censoring. There was a lot of, what's it called when you,
Yeah, a lot of
basically you,
limitations.
your reach becomes a lot less. So they can cut shadow ban.
Oh, okay.
Shadow banning, all this stuff going on. And then he goes and he puts his money where his mouth is, and he actually goes and buys Twitter for $44 billion in 2022. Because a lot of the censoring and shadow banning and all that seemed to be around the pandemic, which started 2020. And recently, Elon Musk was on Joe Rogan, which is very recent. And it was a very interesting podcast. But I remember when he first bought Twitter, he fired a ton of people. I mean, and it was very controversial because he was cleaning house.
Yeah.
And it was a company that already was losing a lot of money. So he needed to make some drastic changes. But I thought of that because you're talking about the acquisition of a business that you bought.
Right.
And I was thinking, Elon Musk, the acquisition of Twitter, which is now called X, I think, right?
Yeah.
Was a huge move. And when Joe Rogan asked him recently, why he did it, he came and said, hey, I don't want to sound like too much of a not dreamer, but he used a certain word. He's like, but I did it to save humanity, because he thought that the censoring of people and not allowing free speech on that platform, he says that it was a very small group of people that had a megaphone to the world, and their decisions on what they were allowing to be on the platform and not
Right.
were affecting the whole world and society.
So essentially, I heard him in another podcast, not with Joe Rogan, and they were accrediting him with saving freedom of speech. Somebody else said, well, by you doing that and getting rid of all the censorship, now once again we're able to be the nation that we are, where you have a different opinion than mine, but we can both voice that opinion over the air.
Correct.
And then let the masses fall where they may.
Right.
Do your own research and then come to your own conclusions.
Right.
And then you make your own decisions, which
Yes.
is the way it should be.
And one
Right.
thing that he brought up also was that he says that freedom of speech, let's say on his platform X, it's not about letting the people that you like have a voice. It's about letting the people you don't like, you disagree with, what they
Also.
say affects you, have a voice. That's really what freedom of speech is protecting, because people that you agree with, you're okay with them talking.
Right.
But anyways, that I thought was bold. I
For
think
sure.
that he entered into action with boldness, and he's backing it up. Whether it ends up being profitable or not, he's got his hands in. So, and you can actually look at his life and you can say he's done this multiple times.
He has. He's a unique individual. I remember he was interviewed by some, he's been interviewed by so many people, but he outsourced the schematics to his electric cars. Okay.
Yes, crowdsource. He crowdsourced it, right?
Okay. And so, crowdsourced.
He gave it to the public. Yeah.
And they say, why would you do something like that? If you are succeeding and let's say your chart is showing increase in sales and revenue, why would you crowdsource it to the competition, let's say? Because the competition is going to be all over it. And
Copying
if they pick
you.
up here
Yeah.
and there a couple of things, they will potentially improve their item and therefore potentially compete with you in a better light.
Yeah.
Right?
You can go out of business.
Right. And he said, I don't care. Let the best man win. Whoever makes the best electric car should have the best revenues or whatever. And not everybody is so sure within their skin to do something like that. He's beyond the money,
Yes.
I think.
And you could find a lot of things wrong with
the guy,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
But one of the things he also said on the Rogan podcast recently was that the only two American car companies that have not gone bankrupt are Ford and Tesla. I haven't fact checked that, I haven't looked into that, but that's what he said. They're the only two American car companies that have not gone bankrupt.
Yeah. It's interesting because, anyway, the law is once you make a decision to do something, forget the naysayers, forget the negative people around you that are telling you this might not work, whatever. Once you make your decision, you gotta become a bulldozer and just go right through whatever blocks and whatever. You just have to, and you could crash,
Right.
But at least you gave it everything you had.
Yes. And I was thinking, like, if you're, because he also talks about, Robert Greene talks about, a con artist can use this, and they can get caught on something that they, let's say, lied about, or they made a mistake, but you overcome that by even more boldness. That's what he's saying. So, it could be used in business settings. It could be used also for people that are trying to con people. Because you think, how is that guy? He must not be conning me. He must not be lying. Look at, I mean, he's backing it up with this, and it reminds me of somebody in the game of poker, which we like playing in Texas Hold'em. You got somebody who's betting massive amounts of bets, and then it gets to him again. You know, there's a lot of strategy behind it, but let's say that he doesn't make a big bet on the next round of betting. You're questioning like whether he actually has the best hand.
Right.
But if he goes in and he says, I'm all in, and he's willing to lose everything that he's got, even though he doesn't have the best hand, it makes you question, do I really want to go up against? Because what if he does have it? And that boldness of him bluffing but still saying I'm all in is very powerful in the game of poker and life.
Yeah, there's a couple guys that are really good at it, and they say, you know, poker is like the game of life.
Yes.
There's so many things that come into it. And also the strategy involves, for those of you that know how to play poker, how much pot committed you are, you know.
The other player, let's say.
The other player.
Sure.
So, you know, if you've bet in, and the same thing goes with how much in a business, maybe the
time invested,
how much pot committed you are on the business.
In a relationship.
Yeah.
In a relationship, you feel, I've spent so much time with this person, I gotta end up with them.
I gotta make it work.
So, I like also how he talks about, so he says, hesitation puts obstacles in our path.
Yes. I believe it.
I believe it. Anytime there's been a moment where I kind of hesitate, I doubt myself, even in martial arts, I was thinking in martial arts, everything is instinctual. When it gets to the point of like fighting, you train, but then like an actual fight, they say, is all instinctual. So you can't hesitate. If that kick's coming to your head, or if that punch is coming to your face, your chin, there's no hesitation. You can't think. And what I can relate to is soccer, because we've played soccer and other sports, but you have to be on your toes, ready at all time. If somebody passes you the ball and you have to think about making that run, you're not going to get it. And so taking away the hesitation and going in with boldness, and just, even if you make a mistake, you keep going. I think there's a lot of strength in that, because
Absolutely.
People are very timid.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's no room for that when you're making decisions like this.
Business negotiations.
Because it's not just going to affect your life. It's going to affect a lot of people.
Yeah.
The people you employ, you know. Like, I'm sure that Elon Musk was thinking, well, he let go of a bunch of people. He cleared house.
He cleared house.
He cleared house. And sometimes you have to do that in order to start on a new slate, you know. You just can't. That's the thing.
And I think that,
not getting political, but supposedly Argentina is going through all of that right now, where this guy Milei is, you know, running on a platform that we got a clean house, man, because for the last 100 years, this is what we've gotten.
It's a bold.
He's definitely
statement.
Committed. The other day I saw a picture of him standing against a wall, and the caption was, "One man alone against the world," or something like that. And so,
yeah.
But
yeah,
he's in the political arena too. This law, this is a fantastic law. It can be applied anywhere, like you said, relationships.
He does bring it up, not only in politics, but he says if you have no voice, he's like, find the Goliath. Do you remember he talks about that? So if you're the David, if you want to be the David, you need to find a Goliath. And you talked about Milei. He's going after the people up top. No one knew who Milei was.
I didn't know who Milei was 6 months ago.
But by going after making a huge bold statement, going after the people that have been in those positions for a long time in Argentina.
Right.
Now he actually has a name. Now people are starting to say, who is this guy?
I think he can win.
And people believe in him too.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. He says you need to find your Goliath.
He's got some crazy ideas, but like on the organ donor thing, you know, very interesting stuff he's got going on if you guys want to look at it. But if you folks, But you're right.
No
Because
one would
six
know
months
who he
ago,
was.
yeah, see, I didn't. Yeah, 6 months ago, I didn't know who Javier Milei was,
There you
and
go.
now I'm a follower.
There you go.
And I think that I
There-
want to believe. I don't want to think that he's a false prophet.
You know, well, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, because you're
mean,
you're a
like the
fan.
guy that tried. Well, in this law,
Um,
they give the example of the guy that sells the Eiffel Tower for scrap metal.
yeah.
Yeah, and so it was such an outrageous idea that they thought, this got to be real.
Correct. The bolder the lie, I wrote it down. The bolder the lie, the better. The more convincing it becomes.
There you go.
They're selling the Eiffel Tower.
The Eiffel Tower. And the idea was that, it needed a lot of upgrades and it had gotten out of hands. And with the advent of the expenses, it was in the millions. So they said, we got to get rid of it. And the guy says, yeah, we're going to get rid of it. And he put together a very, very intricate presentation. It's incredible.
To sell the Eiffel Tower,
And he
even
sold
though
it
he didn't
twice.
own it.
He sold it twice. He sold it to one guy, and the one guy knew that he got duped, right? And he said, if I bring this out to the public, it'll be the end of me as a businessman. They'll think of me that I was just so naive, in parentheses, stupid, for believing in something like this, that I will never be able to put a business deal together again.
Yeah,
So he
reputation.
kept quiet. He never told anybody. And he lost 250,000 francs, which is like $1 million in today's market. So he kept his mouth shut. And because he did that, the same guy, I forget the guy's name, he came back and sold the Eiffel Tower again
Let's look him up.
to another individual. The only difference is that this guy, the second guy, didn't keep his mouth shut.
Victor Lustig.
Lustig.
He was the man
What
that
a
sold
con artist.
He was the con artist in the 19s and 20s, 1920s and 1930s. He sold Paris's beloved Eiffel Tower not once but twice.
Twice. And the second time, listen to this, the second time,
He
sold it for more money than for the first time. So thereby
And from
proving the law. The more
and from a gangster. He sold it to a gangster, right?
Yeah, the guy didn't keep his mouth shut. The second guy didn't keep his mouth shut.
Wow. Yeah, that's an interesting story. Yeah, that's the cool thing that Robert Greene brings up these
He's
historical situations
facts.
and examples.
That's why Robert Greene says, every time I write a blank book, it takes so much out of me. Because the number of hours that he dives into on research is huge. And that's why he's such a history buff. I mean, the guy is something else. I have a great deal of respect for the man.
Absolutely. He also used the example of that the young man. It was Pietro Adetin or something like that, Italian, that wrote like what's it called when you're writing like those newspaper things that are making fun of politics or the Pope?
Caricatures?
Yeah. He was doing something along those lines and put out this ad talking bad about all the Medicis, talking bad about the Pope, talked bad about all these people. No one knew who this person was. But then after he releases this, everyone was like, who is this Pietro guy? And then he ends up getting hired by, I think it was the Pope himself, to end up doing work for them. It reminds me of like in the movie Catch Me If You Can with Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio. It's based on a true story.
Right.
And when the FBI finally catches the con artist, Leonardo DiCaprio, in the movie, they end up hiring him. Spoiler. They end up hiring him to do work for the FBI because that's how good he was at conning people. I like how also this quote of, in negotiations, never ask for too little.
Right. He says, ask for the moon and you will get it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I think that
You have to be bold. You can't. Yeah.
we've learned that a lot in business, in the real estate world, when you're negotiating, whether it's for like a reduction in
Right.
price
Right.
or a credit or something. If you ask for too little, they're gonna give you even less than that. And always ask for
More.
more in negotiations.
Correct.
But I think that comes through practice, because I was gonna ask you, how did you develop the ability to be bold when you take action? How did you develop the ability to hide the timidity or get rid of being that timid or hesitation?
Well, I realized, because I bought a few agencies, I realized that people will sense the fear in you, the timidity. Okay? Timid means fear. People will sense it, and that's going to create obstacles for you moving forward. Because if you're running through 100 miles an hour in a big, huge semi truck, it's going to be very difficult for people to stop that. Okay? Just the kinetic energy alone will make the truck run even further. But if you're running this same size truck, but you're going little at a time, you're trying to cover this corner and that corner, you're going to find a big obstacle in your way potentially. Even it says, even when people see that you're timid, you bring out the lion in them. That's a very important part of the law, because
Your prey.
yeah, you become right. So when they see you that you're timid, you bring out the lion in the opposition. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's extremely important, because the boldness caps out the would-be lions, because they're thinking to themselves, wow, I'm going to get run over if I get in this guy's way.
Right.
I better not get in this guy's way. And that same boldness has a sense of carrying you forward,
Sure.
until you reach your goal in your end. And I believe in it. I know that when we bought that partial agency, there were a lot of people talking, thinking that it wasn't going to be successful.
Mm.
And I'm here to tell you, at the end of the day, it's been successful. There were a couple of things that happened that hurt us.
Sure.
Okay? But we were able to compensate,
Yeah.
going along. Okay? And in the long run, it's worked out. In the long run. That's another thing. You can't have short vision, because that's part of the timidness. You gotta have,
It may not
like the
work.
Japanese, the Japanese, I was reading an article, when they open up a company, okay, they're figuring of making a profit 20 years into the future.
Yeah.
Not in the first 2 years or in the first 5 years. They look at it as raising a baby. You open the company, it's months, it's a baby, and the baby still needs to learn to crawl and walk, and it's only when the baby is running 16 years down the road that they make a profit. So the Japanese have this long range vision.
Sure.
Of, it's interesting, man.
Well, it's talking about long term, the people that we look up to, or the people that have made it successful, it's taken a long time. And so like recently we saw Sebastian Maniscalco.
Right.
He's become extremely famous, we could say within the last 5 years, maybe a little bit longer. But the man's been at it for 30 years.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's that, I'm giving rough numbers. I don't know exactly. But I know that he used to do the Comedy Store, and nobody knew who he was. He was trying to figure out and several famous comedians have said they remember the day when he got on stage and something clicked.
Uh-huh.
And he got whatever was missing in his act. And that's when his career began to take off. But he had been already at it for who knows how long. That's why when you say that the Japanese think long term.
Long term.
And I think that that's smart in a business. It's good to have short term goals also.
Right.
But a long-term vision is very important.
I think it is, and we live in a society where we want immediate gratification,
Yeah.
and you see it all the time. I mean, somebody puts a
Fast
like,
food,
yeah, TikTok.
social
You put a
media.
video on TikTok and it gets 100.
It happens.
It
Very
happens,
rare.
but right, it's not the norm.
No.
And when like Maniscalco, we just went to see him, and I'm here to tell you his show was packed.
Yeah.
It was packed. It was, pardon me, excuse me, where's my chair? There was a ton of people there, and he is very funny.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to say a word, just his expressions. And that's also the thing that Robert Greene talks about in another book. But, mastery, in the book Mastery that he's written, he talks about the 10,000 hours.
Yes.
Okay?
Yep.
And you come full circle, right? When you've put in so much homework, so much effort into your trade. Because he was up there on stage, and just the facial expressions he was making, I was laughing like a,
Yeah.
I mean, the guy had me cracking up.
He's good.
He asks a question and he puts his, and then like Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan is also a comedian, right? He says, you have to master when you speak,
Timing.
the timing, you stay quiet, you make the expression, all this kind of stuff. And that's honing your trade.
Definitely.
And the same thing goes for this law.
Yeah.
You got to realize that at one point, when you decide I'm going forward with this, that's it. Whoever gave you advice before, this and that, whatever, everybody to the side, and you become a bulldozer and just ram through everything.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing perfect in life.
Yeah.
There's something that's going to come up that you're going to have, and that's your solutions, your people skills, you resolve it.
Yeah.
I'll never forget Patrick Bet-David. I listened to him, a lot. And he was saying, look, the man that started this company would not be able to run the company today if he had not changed, developed, grown, learned.
Sure.
Because the guy that started here had no idea where this was going to develop, and he's become very, very successful. And so, but he says it, hey man, the guy I was, but you grow with the process.
You're forced to grow. Yeah.
That's it, man.
Or you get left behind.
You got it. You're forced to grow. That's it.
I personally have never believed in, as you know, a part-time approach of things. Because if you would have just gone all in and entered action with boldness, you could have gone there so much faster. Because you really learn, from my personal point of view, the real way you learn is falling down, actually getting hurt in some instances, because that's, like you say, you don't put your hand in the fire again, right? But
right.
if somebody's just telling you, you can learn a lot from other people, and mentors are very important, but the real life learning is when it's actually affecting you, when you're losing sleep, when you're being tested and stressed, and you're going through the difficult stuff. And if you're doing something part-time, for me, I equate that to Law 28, is that you're not entering action with boldness. You're not going on in. There's a timidity or a hesitation.
I'll tell you what, you made a believer out of me, because when you sold your business, I honestly thought you were making a mistake. Now, hindsight is 20/20, but as we look back, you made the right decision. And you made the right decision right at the perfect time, because shortly thereafter, a lot of things happen in your industry.
Right.
But when you told me you were going to sell your business,
Yeah, I
I
just.
thought that that was a mistake, so I told you, hey, you better think twice about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, I
but
did. I thought a lot about it. I mean, it was a
what?
big decision. I had been doing that bit line of business for like close to 7 years, 8 years, specifically
And you were
full.
doing well. That's the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
That's the thing. So when you said that, I thought, but see, you gotta give credit where credit belongs. Like like what is that old saying? When in Rome, do as the Romans, kind of thing. You were in that particular line of business, and although our businesses were similar, I was not in your direct line.
Correct.
So you saw some writing on the walls that I couldn't see. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I think also you're coming from a place of a father, and so you're trying to protect your son
Because you were doing well.
because it's a risk, and so one needs to make their own decision. I don't like the idea of saying like you make your own decisions, and then if it goes bad, then it was on you, and if you didn't make that decision because of other people, I personally, I mean, every situation is different, but talking about a business, if my situation, if I wouldn't have done it because I was
Oh,
taking advice from other people, it's my fault at the end of the day, and I gotta live with it. And so, even though one has good intentions, you have to be really careful who you're taking advice from, and is that really the best thing for you in your future? Because sometimes maybe falling down is the best thing too.
that's right. And we learned this, folks, some of it or a lot of it through experience, okay? Because, for example, many
Sure.
years ago, I went to someone for advice that I had a great deal of respect for, and this particular person says, "Oh, I wouldn't do that." I
Mhm.
said, "Okay." And I based a lot of weight on that, and I didn't do it, and I believe that it was a mistake. As things develop later on in life,
Right.
I look at that as being a mistake. Now, my wife, who has been my business partner all along, also believes that it wasn't.
Okay.
Okay? So there
Different
you
points of
see the
view.
difference of opinion.
Yeah.
But in my heart, nobody's ever going to take that away from me that it was a mistake.
But you learn from it
Oh,
because you never take advice from somebody else. You
well,
in the
there's
same way.
right. At
Maybe
the
you
end of
don't
the
give as
day,
much weight to that anymore.
right. You got to make your own
You got to
decisions.
make your own. You can't not make that decision because that person thought it wasn't a good decision, or they don't know all the ins and outs of things.
Like I told you, I think you're making a mistake. You went ahead and did it anyway,
Well,
and it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Because shortly thereafter,
but
all
even if
kinds
it
of
wouldn't have
things.
been thereafter, I mean, you have to. I was ready to make a career change at that point in my life.
Okay.
But
Well,
whatever would have
COVID.
happened with the company,
Well, let me ask you something. Let me put you on the spot in front of everybody. Would you have made that decision in selling your business if COVID hadn't hit?
of course not. Yeah, the COVID, the pandemic. I mean, you know how many restaurants went under, you know how many businesses went under, unfortunately, because of many things. Some of them were because of the way it was handled within the state or a city or a county. These businesses just were.
Pummeled,
There was no,
destroyed.
yeah,
But see, you just answer
there was no
very,
no
of course not.
no, I wouldn't have made that decision. But there was no regard for 40 years in business, 50 years in business, two uh, what generations in the family restaurant. There was no regard for that. And these guys just got destroyed, unfortunately, many businesses. Some uh, were able to weather it and are back, and new ones have opened as well. But man, yeah, I wouldn't have survived staying in the business that I was in, which was financial services, life insurance, and
Well,
investment
your mind
products.
wasn't in it after all. That's why
Well,
shortly after you said, "Hey, Dad, I'm doing it anyway," um, if the type of you have to be committed to the cause.
Right.
And if your heart and mind together, your spirit, and you're not into it,
Get out.
you, I would say,
And that's one thing. You can enter with boldness and you can exit with boldness.
that's
And-
pretty good. I like that.
And I think
Hey,
I think that it's a good trait just in general. But I'll tell you, I wasn't always that way, as you know. I had a lot of hesitations. I still do today have some hesitations. But once you decide, like you said, in your mind, whether it's a T chart or quickly you can analyze something and make a decision, the best opportunities you can even look at in the real estate world, in the investment space, you need to move with speed, boldness. You need to take action quickly because
And
a good
accuracy.
opportunity doesn't wait.
right.
And so I think that there's a lot. I really like this law as well. You know, the last couple laws we've been like, these are hard laws. If used in a good way, I think this law is very powerful and has benefited me. You said it's benefited you, and it could benefit those maybe listening. And hopefully, this sheds some light. Other examples of where we've seen it take place.
Well, we've used it. We've
Yeah.
practiced it. I remember specifically going back to that chapter for like a push,
Mm-hmm.
like an umph. I needed something, because I remember being alone in a room thinking, what do I do? Which way do I go?
Yeah.
Because my pros and cons table was about even. And usually the one outweighs the other. And it makes the decision a little bit easier. But I remember being alone with myself, my thoughts, and going to this chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And I got motivation and a push and the strength. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to do it, I have to do it this way. So when
Right.
I made the decision to go for it, okay, there was like no stopping. That was it. And
Yeah.
and I was able to have a staff meeting and with tremendous integrity tell them, we're going to succeed in this
Mm-hmm.
or we're going to die trying.
But at the end of the day, I think that and even you have a staff and a great team and all this. At the end of the day, it could be lonely because you're the one who made that decision. If it goes wrong,
Yeah.
it's on you. If it was right, well, good job.
Well, the ride to get it was brutal. The beginning was brutal,
and
but we ironed things out and took out the squeaks here, squeaky. I mean,
but when you make a decision like that, like when I opened a new business, it was very lonely. No, all the support, everybody's there. Hey, I hope
Yeah,
you do
but you're
well
alone.
and everything. No one's there with you when it's 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and you're still working on some of the things to move your business forward. And so sometimes it's maybe glorified. Oh, I want to have a business, or I want to do this, I want to do that. Well, are you willing to
Put
be
in.
by yourself? Even your partner in life, it can help in a lot of things, and who you choose is extremely important as your partner in life. But still, at the end of the day, you're the one by yourself crunching certain numbers, dealing with certain stresses.
Right.
And when you enter with boldness, all of that has to be, I think, put aside. This is the decision, and then I'll face whatever I have to face down the road.
That's it. The law. Law 28. But I like what you said. Enter action with boldness. So you enter with boldness and you exit with boldness if you have to. Sounds good to me, man.
Wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.